Hello and welcome to What Not Another One as we embark on yet another episode, another big story. This is actually a very long running story that's sort of come to be something even bigger because of the union, the select union at least, that has decided to start striking today, which is the Royal College of Nursing. Quite a big story. We've had a lot of strikes over the last month at least, if not longer. From various different workforces. Would you like to tell a bit of the story?
If the UK was a sport right now, it'd be baseball, and it'd be very bad at baseball because it's strike one, strike two, strike three. Everyone's out on strike. It's the nurses, postal workers, train RMT, train drivers, train staff, university. This is the Conservatives' winter of discontent. There's strikes going on everywhere. People are angry, rightfully so, and rather than anyone doing anything about it, they're trying to clamp down on people striking and make it harder for people to strike, and make it harder for people to go on strike and actually fight for better wages and better working conditions.
Yeah, it's 1978 to 1979 all over again, isn't it? And it's sort of it gets shocking having railways striking and striking heavily. I mean, they're striking now in December, and they're also going to be striking in January. But they've also got a ban on members, basically certain roles working. So and on what's it called? Overtime work, I think it is. So there's an overtime ban, which basically means it's a straight 4-week strike, effectively. And then we have what's really sort of brought it all to the forefront of the media, and what's really made it so important for people is now that the fact that the nurses have decided to start striking over pay, as it were. I mean, pay is the big problem in the end, because the pay is what affects the working hours, which is another problem. With universities, staff were also striking over pensions and pension cuts. So these are the sort of like the main issues, and all of this is boiled down from a variety of factors. Long-term economic problems, I think, from everything I've read, all the sort of, because I'm not an economist in any way, but all the sort of explanations as to the economy, a lot of this boils down to 2008 all over again. Is that like everything can be traced back to 2008 and the big financial crash has sort of the way it's affected the UK's economy since then. Add on top of that COVID and the war in Ukraine, and then you get the problems with inflation that come out of that, and then you get to this, sadly.
The problem with it is we've had 12 years of Conservative governments, and every single one of them has run out the same excuse of, it's this problem, it's this problem, it's this. And it is a combination of those things that impact the economy. But it's been 12 years and it's worse than it was. But I can't remember ever this many strikes happening at the same time. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention. But I can't remember this many people, this many unions, this many various sectors of society being on strike.
I think as well, like, you look back at like the Conservative government doesn't have the opportunity to do what it used to do, which is say this is the fault of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, like they were able to do before. They've been in power now for 12 years. You can't blame them any longer.
They just blame it on the Right Honourable Member for Islington North instead.
As he says, living rent-free in every Prime Minister's head at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, neither of us have ever experienced in our lifetime striking like this, but you hear it from like our family. I mean, like I know from my dad, for example, growing up in the 70s. I mean, he lived through the winter of discontent. What it was like to walk out your front door, and because the bin men were striking, all you could smell was just rubbish lining the streets. He also, I've always been told that story. It's about the fire service going on strike, and Margaret Thatcher basically sending the military in to run all the fire stations, and basically saying to the fire service workers that if they were going to strike, then fine, they don't need to work, they can stay at home and not get paid, and the military will go in and do their job for them, which kind of defeated the purpose of the strikes in the end because it just meant that everything was running normally. Just not how you would expect it to.
Yeah. This country has always had a sort of not the best relationship with strikers, striking and workers' rights. You know, you've had Orgreave and miners' strikes, things like that. Just there's never seems to have been strike action that has resulted in big changes.
Yeah.
I mean, like the nurses going on strike, it's never happened before. You know, through COVID, through lockdown, pandemic, you know, people clapping outside, and you can't pay your rent with claps. Like you need to be paid. You need to be paid. You need better working conditions.
No, I mean, it's like, yeah,
the Sam Fender song Saturday. The first line is overtired, overworked, underpaid, under pressure. Sums up everything
Jesus
that's going
Christ.
on right now. It sums everything up. Like my partner works when lockdown and COVID was happening. She works in the NHS, and she was having to get fully PP'd up every day and spend hours and just having to look after people. And you've got the whole Michelle Moan thing at the minute, all the PPE contracts. Is it any wonder that nurses are fed up with what's been going on? I think everyone's just fed up, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I mean, talk about numbers. I was just saying before, there's a graphic that's really helpful on The Guardian, which shows who's striking basically and how many people are striking across the month of December. And according to statistics, according to the number of balloted people who have said they will strike across all four unions, and more, in fact, even the large unions like Unite, etc., which are much broader, there will be up to 1.3 million workers expected to be on strike in the month of December alone, which that is a massive chunk of the UK's workforce downing tools and saying, no, we demand better, and doing no work for that month. Like, if the government doesn't find a way to communicate and put their the conceived ideas they have of unions to one side and just say, look, we have to find some sort of common ground. Yes, maybe they won't give exactly everything that's being demanded, but like find sort of common ground that can get people to a stage where it's like, right, we've got good discussions. Our union members will go back to work and we'll continue to find the more improved deal, but this is a start, sort of thing. That is what is needed, but the government have basically just said, do one, you don't, we're not going to give you anything. And I think as well, like, as it were, I think this is partially, it's a historical Tory policy, which is if you support the unions, you're a leftist who should be behind Keir Starmer, more or less. And that's how they kind of paint it. I think this is coming from a 1970s Tory, like that's how far back this probably goes as a policy, if not even further. This could go all the way back to the 1920s when we had the last general strike.
But then you've got Keir Starmer on the other side saying to his MPs, I don't want you to go out and support people on strike. Like that's the whole point of the Labour Party, is to support workers. When you take that away, you may as well be sat on the other side of the house.
The thing is, I think what makes it complicated working with strikers and unions, the problem is when it comes to unions is either you work with them and you are denounced as being in the union's back pockets and like letting them do as they please and taking too much control, or you do nothing and you lose loads of the population, loads of the electorate. And I think as a politician, you would think of it that way as well. Your electorate, these are the people that could vote you out at the next general election. And instead of giving more control to unions or whatever, you'll go the other way to the other extreme, and all of a sudden you're allowing discontent to grow to a to a massive proportion that it shouldn't be at. So the balancing act as it is has so far failed. They've not found a way to find common ground, and it's it's put the UK into a position that it's not been in for a long time.
Feels like it's heading towards a general strike. It feels like everybody is so fed up with everything that's going on. Like 1.3 million people on strike in December. That's more than twice the population of Sheffield. That's like if everyone in Sheffield said, "No, I'm not going to bother today because I'm being treated like rubbish. I'm not going to take it anymore." That's two whole it's Sheffields that are on strike. It's not small numbers. It's just going to keep growing until something's done.
I mean, like with Sheffield Wire, like we've had people out discussing these stories, people like finding great quotes, but like really helping to break it down and explain what's going on across all of these strikes. And basically the main thing is just I mean, money is the easiest way to put it, but in reality what it is, it's just a lack of willingness from the government to do anything. Like the government keeps saying that they'll find ways, but that the demands are inappropriate or too far reaching and impossible to achieve. And yes, maybe they are a little bit too far reaching, but that doesn't mean that you don't that doesn't mean that you just say, right, well, we're not going to do anything then until you come back to us with something better. They give you the offer, you the government then have to negotiate. You don't tell them you don't like the offer, go away. This isn't some sort of like shady black market like trading. Like you can actually talk to people without either pulling a gun on them and like shooting them, or just walking away. Like it's not as it's not as bad a situation as all that. It shouldn't be.
I think the problem with the government at the minute is that they're so out of touch with working people. That I remember the clip where someone was saying nurses are having to use food banks, and Dominic Raab said, well, it's not because people are poor that they're using food banks, they just have cash problems episodically. Like, no, that's not how it works. They're so out of touch with real people. But
I think that line there, so out of touch with real people, is probably what sums everything up in a nutshell. I've heard that said by a lot of people from these sort of professions regularly, and I think that's the biggest problem, is that government has decided that it knows best, and best is spending roll because it's easy.
And
I mean, like I was saying before, like when it came to nurses, for example, so each of these unions has different sort of pay bodies. They have different sort of schemes for how they pay their workers. Nurses, especially with NHS, is a bit different to the others because it is much more centralized to government. And basically, the government has a review body which is independent, as it were, that makes its own judgment for the government, which it hands to the government for what it thinks the pay increase should be. And obviously, we had COVID, horrible hours for people working with the NHS, people being brought out of retirement to work at the NHS. The system was on the verge of crippling multiple times. and arguably has been crippled to an extent because of COVID. And it's not been easy at all for nurses and doctors to cope from a mental perspective, let alone just from an occupational perspective. And hence they came forward with wanting a much more appropriate pay rise to recognize that hard graft they put in for 2 years and still are having to put in now. There are still people going into hospital with COVID, with long COVID, with horrible symptoms. It's a horrible job. Like the stuff that you have to see on those wards, especially when it was during the peaks of the like various waves of the coronavirus. And they came. I was just reading that back in 2020, the number I think it was 12.5% is what was asked for as an increase to the overall pay packet for nurses and doctors, or nurses specifically. But the review body came back and said, no, the number we put forward is 4.3%. I can't remember what the government went with. I think the government went with something slightly bit. I think they may have gone with 5%, but they still didn't go, anywhere near 12.5. And I guess that is where this whole discussion has started and has culminated in what is a travesty, considering that I believe they've never striked before. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't think so.
I don't think they've ever striked before, which is why it's also such a massive ordeal and such a massive thing within UK politics, within the media here, that it's happening. Yeah, and it's actually just thoroughly embarrassing for the government that they've had the last 3 years to try and come up with an improved pay package to recognize everything, because as you said, money actually improves someone's lifestyle, not claps.
Yeah.
If claps helped, I would happily let everyone clap me out of the classroom every day, but it doesn't. I'd rather you gave me a tenner.
And the thing is, you get MPs all the time saying, "Oh, £84,000 isn't enough to live on." Oh, woe is me! All my meals are subsidised by the taxpayer.
Yeah, but they get to have like second homes that they don't have to pay for and stuff like that, and they don't have to declare certain like, shall we say, other work opportunities that they have. They're allowed to have more than one job than just being an MP. Rees-Mogg sits on the board of a number of companies, but sort of just like not in a physical capacity, but he still makes money off of it.
Yeah.
And so I'm just saying, like, how is you allowed to do that, taking home a couple $100,000 a year, rather than, loosening the purse strings a little bit, giving some money back, and letting people have a decent wage that reflects their hard graft they're putting in for all of us, what is it, 64 million people, whatever, living in this country?
Yeah, it's not like it affects like 5 people. Literally, the whole country. I think, just another a tangent to go on is to look at the media coverage of strikes, and I compared to, as we keep saying, compared to lockdown. It was like, oh, the heroes keep the country going. Yeah, exactly. Fantastic. And now it's, Mick Grinch, head of the RMT, like steals Christmas, things like this. It's like, I mean, we all know that the print press in the UK is highly partisan and is just, you know what you're going to get. But they do it on the Mail, especially do it on a daily basis. They'll flip and flop around, but.
See, I love it because I'm doing my ethics essays on a Daily Mail article, which I know, highly ironic. I chose the Daily Mail for my topic. And, we know what the Daily Mail is like when it comes to nurses at the moment, say that what are they striking for, how selfish of them, they've got a whole country to look after. But the article, this is back from, I think it's the 15th November, was taking the two biggest topics at the time, two topics that the Mail adores, and it was a headline: nurses paying price of migrant crisis.
Yeah.
So have a think about that one.
Let's
Come
shift
back.
the let's shift the blame onto who can we shift it onto? Who's on the top of the mails list today? Foreigners. Yeah.
Easy way. And the thing is, if you read deeper, they start going on about foreign nurses being kicked out as well and stuff like that. Convoluted story all over the place.
You,
Definitely breaches due accuracy.
you can take it back to like all through Brexit, and it was like they made it harder for foreign people to come over to this country to work in the NHS. You know, people that have got PhDs and have brilliant doctors in their own country want to come to the UK to work in the NHS. It's not, you know, there was always the thing like, oh, coming over here, taking our jobs. Like, all right, then, Gary, 55 from Stockport, who's never had a job, you go be a brain surgeon.
We apologize, Gary. We might not be you specifically, but there is a Gary.
Yeah, so that sort of mentality has seeped into everything, and I think everyone that's on strike at the minute, you know, fair play. You're fighting for better rights. You're fighting for better pay. You know, Posties, my mate's Postie, he's on strike. He works incredibly hard. You know, they're up early. Where would we be without Royal Mail? You wouldn't be getting any post. It'd be coming with, you know, certain less reputable delivery companies and getting slung over the back fence and breaking, or you know, people have such good relationships with their posties. Where I lived,
dogs love them.
Yeah, exactly. When I was growing up, like we had the same postie from when I was about 5 to, you know, 25. You know, you get to know your posties. They go they go above and beyond, and for them to now say, you know, look, we're putting all this work in, we're getting peanuts. The work conditions are horrible. Yeah, too right.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I mean, I respect those that are striking within these industries because it isn't an easy time. I also respect those who choose not to strike for their own principles. So, like, as in, we've had a lot of university strikes over the last few years. I know people that had basically almost a whole semester worth of content within their 3 years of their undergrad taken away from them because of strikes. And you feel sorry for the professors, but the students as well struggle because of it. And, you know, that content doesn't, I mean, certain professors might give that content back to them at a later date or another way, but generally that doesn't come back. You don't get that content again. You lose that content, you lose it for good. And then you get, I had a professor who was very adamant he wouldn't join his other colleagues within the media department to strike because he viewed it as wrong to ruin the student's experience. He believed in better conditions, but he wasn't willing to put his own personal gains in the way of his own morals for becoming a teacher. And you know, I respect that as well.
It's similar, like at the minute, you know, trains are in chaos. That affects normal people trying to get home for Christmas, people trying to visit family. It affects normal people, you know, posties. People might send something for Christmas, might not get there in time. It affects normal people. But I think a lot of the anger is misplaced at the people on strike, whereas it needs to be focused on the people that are in charge of the country and the people that are in power and have the power to make those decisions. You know, the bosses of the company that are taking home 6-figure salaries every year. And
here's a question for you. Sorry, I was going to say, here's a question for you then. People are angry at those who are striking. So, are they angry at those who are striking because of the impact this has on them personally, or because the government and media within the UK has spun a very, maybe you'd say horrible, but very effective stream of headlines that has managed to tip enough of the population towards disliking those who are striking?
I think it's a combination. You know, so we've spoken briefly about, you know, the way the tabloids cover strike action. You know, it's a targeted campaign to sort of discredit those that are on strike, discredit the leaders of the unions, and so that they don't care about you as a person. They don't care that you need to get home. They don't care that you've sent a letter. As they do. The whole thing is that they do give a monkeys. They do care. It's but the people that are in charge don't.
I think that the mentality people forget is that when you choose to strike, you don't do it because you want to be a to everyone. You do it because you've got no other choice.
Yeah,
you feel you're backed into a corner where you can't get out. The only way to get out is to take a stand, as it were.
Yeah, the amount of strikes going on at the minute in the cost of living crisis, people don't get paid when they're on strike.
Yeah, it's a heavy risk to take.
It's a big decision to take. It's a huge decision to take. And the longer it goes on, the more people are going to struggle. It's just a vicious circle.
I mean, all we can do, to be honest, though, at this point, is hope that the government will come forward with an improved pay package or something that allows dialogue to take place, that allows there to be common ground and puts the unions at least at ease a little bit more, and means that we can get back to some level of normality whilst we have all these other issues are going on in the world, so that we can say that at least we've solved something that's going wrong. And at least, put and help these people who are in tough jobs who deserve better.
Yeah. I mean, Rishi Sunak's got billions, doesn't he? He's a man that earns or has billions of pounds in the family is not the man that's going to help the country, is he? It comes down to greed from, I think, companies, like people running the companies and the government. I think it comes down to the brass tacks of it is, we want more money. You can have less money. You do it. It's the same most places, isn't it? The people that do all the work are the ones that get paid the least. The ones that get paid the most are the ones that sit around all day and point fingers and tell everyone else what to do. So
I think what we need to have happen then basically is, I mean, I was going to say, I'd now come to my mind all of a sudden. When we had the budget announced, the budget basically said, we're broke. We've got no money. We've only got enough to afford this level of spending. And, massive cuts, cuts no one wanted to see. Very, unlike anything, whatever anyone wanted. And I think basically with the current proposals from the unions, we're not going to get a change in pay for at least 2 to 3 years, because it's going to take that long for the economy to apparently become stable and to no longer be in the negative, as it were.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens at the next general election on a whole host of fronts, and see how the country is going to vote.
I think Labour have managed to pull off the biggest social media coup of all time, because by running very little, they've actually done very well.
Yeah.
They've basically let the Tories implode, and we'll swoop in the back door and just take it. I mean, the polling at the moment puts them at massive majority that I don't think they've had even since like Tony Blair's first election. Like the Tories would be down. The last check, ironically, had them down at 69 seats.
Wow.
Like and I think that's not because people like Keir Starmer. That's not because people like the Labour Party. The Labour Party still divides people. That's just purely because the Conservative Party is hated.
Yeah.
Virile hate. People will not vote for them because they have destroyed this country in the last. I mean, Liz Truss alone lost them at least half those seats. Kazi Kwarteng then lost them about another quarter or whatever. Then the rest is just because of the usual infighting from Boris to now. And
so there's so many people standing down as well. MPs,
big politicians as well.
Yeah.
Sajid Javid, I think, so he's going to be dropping. He won't be standing again. Matt Hancock won't stand again. But they say that's because it's a ploy to get out to Strictly Come Dancing.
And we wouldn't surprise. That's a whole nother episode.
I couldn't do that. I couldn't have to talk and say like, oh yeah, I watched Rhythm Dancing. Matt Hancock did a brilliant jive yesterday. His salsa is impeccable. I don't want to go near that.
Anyway,
but yeah, you know that, and basically, I think that sums it up. That people see them now as a joke party. They are a joke, simple as that. They've got so much that they need to do to become reputable again and to make people think we can trust. They're not even the most trustworthy party with the economy anymore, which is a Tory like home front.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like, well, what are you going to do next then? You know, what have you got up your sleeve to try and get you out of this one? I mean, saying that, we won't have the next general election until it would be January or February, I think, 2025. If I say 2005, 2025.
The good old days.
The good old days before the economy crashed. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like, everyone can predict what they want. We're about to, you know, we're not far off 2023 now. See where things go politically, and obviously all we can hope for is rail strikes ending, university staff getting the pay rises they deserve, and I think the biggest one, obviously, nurses getting what they deserve following COVID, and postal workers as well. Shout out to your mate. So yeah,
up the trig.
So yeah, I think that's all we can hope for. I think that's where we just have to keep trying to push this to go, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a hard winter for everyone. So I think people that people that are fighting for, you know, what they think is fair, and probably is fair, then yeah, more power to them. Fair play. Takes a lot of guts to do it.
I think all I think we should end on here is just respect to those who are striking, and we hope that some sort of dialogue can take place that is productive and puts everyone at ease and into a better position, so that we do not have a winter of discontent.
Yeah,
because that's the last thing I want to see. So yeah, and I'm going to be abroad at the time anyway, so I don't want to watch it from afar. I'll watch it burn. I'll watch the country burn down.
I mean, it's been burning for a while. It's been burning for a while. So
yeah. But listen, I think that is where we will end it for today. I think that this, again, like last week, a very important topic, one that is, you know, something that's been coming for a while, that it just had to be talked about. And that's despite all the economic stories out this week and the migrant crisis as well. I think that's how big this is.
Yeah, the strikes it's been like when you make rice on the hob or pasta on the hob, and then the water's like boiling away, and then the bubbles just come all over the top, and it all spills over. It's been like that.
It's a pain to clean up. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's the great metaphor of cooking pasta equals strikes.
I think that's where we'll leave it, because obviously we are pushing everything in our brains to like the furthest edges. Okay, but yeah. Thank you for listening. Remember, like, comment, subscribe. We always want to hear more story ideas. Yeah, and we'll be back in a week, hopefully.
Thanks for listening to another episode of what? Not
another one.